Perfect is the enemy of the good, Ukrainian ministers said as European leaders burning the midnight oil finally came to a compromise. Ukraine's war machine is in danger of stalling without more cash, and today, after fractious talks, it was thrown a lifeline.
Today we approved a decision to provide 90 billion euros to Ukraine for the next 2 years. As a matter of urgency, we will provide a loan backed by the European Union budget.
Ukraine's President Zelenskyy had hoped the cash would come from Russian assets, mostly frozen in Belgium. But Belgium's leader wasn't convinced other nations would cough up in the event of legal action from Russia. A disappointment for Germany and the Commission's president, who'd led the campaign to use it wholesale.
Ukraine would only need to pay back the loan once it receives reparations. Until then, the immobilized Russian assets will remain immobilized, and the Union reserves its right to make use of the cash balances to finance the loan.
A victory of a kind came in the unlikely form of Hungarian Premier Viktor Orban, who voted against giving frozen Russian cash to Ukraine directly, but was convinced begrudgingly to agree to the loan as long as he wasn't on the hook for it.
All the others, except the Czechs and Slovaks, think that it was a good decision. I think it was an extremely bad decision, which brings Europe closer to the war. It looks like a loan, but of course the Ukrainians will never be able to pay it back. So it's basically a lost money.
President Putin, in an hours-long national address, accused the EU of being burglars.
Theft is a secret stealing of property. In our case, they are trying to do it openly. It is robbery. No matter what and how they steal, they will need to give it back at some point. Besides, we will defend our interest in courts. We will try to find a jurisdiction which will be independent of political decisions.
Russia itself, under financial pressure, is nevertheless making advances and claiming them too. This a war not just of drones and missiles. Putin today told of victory in the eastern city of Kupiansk, accusing President Zelenskyy of faking a recent video of himself in the city meeting soldiers.
He's an artist, and a talented one at that. I say that without irony. We know it from his films in previous times.
As Trump claims a ceasefire is closer than ever before, any end to the war looks checkered by the distance between Russia and Ukraine's positions, with Putin demanding land he hasn't captured and likely to reject European peacekeeping troops in Ukraine. Today, for the first time, Ukraine said it had hit one of the oil tankers in Russia's shadow fleet as it sailed covertly through the Mediterranean. Putin and his war economy seemingly resistant to sanctions as well as international diplomacy. I'm joined in the studio by Natia Seskuria from the Royal United Services Institute think tank. Natia, Putin absolutely furious today about this idea of having those Russian assets given to Ukraine. The EU Commissioner sounds like she's still up for giving it a go. Other European leaders seem to be a bit queasy about it. How hard is it to do?
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for having me. I think it's very hard negotiations between the EU countries because we don't have the unanimous position when it comes to achieving a breakthrough when it comes to using the Russian assets. And I think Belgium is the main problem here because obviously there are legal constraints that Belgium is very worried about. And it will take some time to achieve some consensus over this issue. I think today's decision is in a way, it's a breakthrough because it's still a lot of support for Ukraine, 90 billion euros. But it is much crucial to make sure that European leaders achieve some sort of consensus over the use of frozen Russian assets, because that would be main support for Ukraine in the next year.
And we know that they're already using the interest from those assets to fund Ukraine. What are the concerns then, the legal constraints or perhaps the kind of reputational concerns they have about just taking that cash?
I think it's mostly about the risks that the use of Russian frozen asset poses, particularly for Belgium, because in case of a peace deal, they are quite worried that Russia might sue, and then there will be legal repercussions. So I think one way to achieve some sort of solution out of this complicated situation is for other European allies to ensure Belgium that there will be risk sharing and burden sharing. So these, I think, would be the discussions for the next couple of weeks. And I think I'm, to be honest, more optimistic about achieving some sort of consensus over this issue than the other issues.
This €90 billion cash injection, how far will that go? Will it change the dial?
I doubt it will shift the battlefield situation, to be honest, because Ukraine needs much more support when it comes to financial support and also military support. That is even more crucial in this case, I think, to shift the battlefield dynamics.
Mm-hmm. And we often speak about Ukraine's cash flow problems. How is Russia doing?
I mean, Russia still has an ability, unfortunately, to fund its war effort, and I think that was also something that Putin was trying to sell to his citizens today. Obviously, I think his speech, what we heard today, is much exaggerated. But Russia still has allies, such as China, for instance, that it can rely on. Russia is basically functioning as a war economy because it needs a lot of finances to be able to sustain this increasingly draining effort in Ukraine. But I think if Russia wants to go ahead and continue fighting against Ukraine, it still has the ability to do so for the next couple of years.
If international sanctions are working, then how is Russia able to continue funding its war effort in the way that it is?
I think first the international sanctions could have been much stronger against Russia, especially when it comes to secondary sanctions. I think there hasn't been much consensus over punishing Russia's partners who are funding Russia's war economy. So I think that is a very important point if Europe and the US want to impose limitations over Russia's ability to continue this war. So I think Russia has found ways in which they can rely on alternative partners to diversify economy, and this way to, in a way, find gaps within the sanctions and ways in which they can still continue fighting in Ukraine and ensure that its defense industry is still functional and well-funded.
And so where are we then with the ceasefire? President Trump has said we're closer than ever. I get the impression you don't share his optimism.
No, I don't. I don't. I think we are nowhere close to achieving a ceasefire or a peace deal over Ukraine. I do think that Russia is not willing to make any concessions simply because I think Putin believes that he can achieve battlefield successes. And I think he knows that Trump is rushing. For Trump, this is something that will grant him this global sort of acknowledgement as a peacemaker. So Putin wants to play the game, and I think today's press conference was also, he was very clear during today's press conference that he wants to sort of continue these negotiations and portray Ukraine as the main problem in this case.
Natia Saskouria, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.